Hi, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started in 5 minutes. Thanks so much for joining us. Stay tuned. We're starting at 1 p.m. Thank you. Hi, everyone. This is Nick Chaillan. We're going to get started in 3 minutes. Hope you've been well. We will talk today about cattle versus pets and take your questions live. So please, if you have questions, type them into the comment section. We'll take all questions today for 2 hours. So thanks for joining us, and we'll get started in about 3 minutes. Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Nick Chaillan. Thanks for joining us again. I'm the former Air Force and Space Force Chief Software Officer. This is my first LinkedIn Live, so thanks so much for joining us. This is a first for me, so I'm still struggling with how this works, so we'll figure out together. So if you have questions, we'll take your live questions today. So please make sure that you use the comment section below so we can take your questions live. In the meantime, what we're going to do is go over a few key piece of information. You'll see that effectively we're going to cover cattle versus pets today and take some of your questions after that. Of course, please follow us on LinkedIn. My profile is under my name, Nicolas Chaillan. And of course, if you want to take a look at some of the curated content that we put together over the years, check out preventbreach.com/curated-content. Now we'll take a look a little bit about and talk about cattle versus pet. But first, I wanted to do a shout out and special thanks to Senator Mike Rounds, who brought up my resignation and my concern for software and innovation during the nomination of Mr. Hunter during the Armed Service hearing for the nomination of Mr. Hunter to replace Dr. Roper, who was my former boss in the Air Force. So they brought up the great question, which is, what are we going to do to make sure that we are taking action when it comes to software innovation, DevSecOps. And I'm glad to hear that Mr. Hunter wants to make that a top priority. Now it's going to be about getting it done and making sure we stop the talking part of this and really focus on action. So that's what I'm going to be looking for, and I'm sure you all agree that this is what we all want to see happen. So again, like I said, if you do have questions, please make sure to post it into the comment section below, so I can take your questions live, and we'll get started now with a quick overview of what's going on when it comes to cattle versus pets. So the concept of cattle versus pets is essential to understand when you move into cloud native capabilities. And really, at the end of the day, the concept is pretty simple. Your pets, you care about it, you give them names, you want to make sure they're healthy, and you will make sure to heal them if they get sick. Of course, when it comes to cattle, I guess you end up bringing them behind the barn and shoot them if they get sick, and they are more treated as disposable, whether we like it or not. So those are my dogs and cows next door, so you can say hi to them. And really, now what we want to talk about is kind of the key differences between the two, and the value that treating everything as cattle, including your entire infrastructure and your entire platform stack and your application on top. And so when it comes to pets, again, like I said, you give it names, you raise them by hand, often manually, you care for them when they get ill, and you nurse them back to health. The infrastructure is often permanent. You want to care about uptime. You don't want any downtime. It's often manual, maintained for years. You often require tremendous planning for migration. The maintenance is done during maintenance hours. There's a lot of humans in production with elevated privileges and a lot of manual day to upgrade and maintenance. So that's always something that ends up creating a lot of challenges. So now, when it comes to the other aspect of this in terms of replicability and drifts, of course, because a lot of this stuff is manual, you're seeing that this stuff is not replicable, and you're going to see drifts between instantiations and deployments with no ability to inject cyber capabilities and be able to have reverse proxies easily, and observability with some of what the service mesh in Kubernetes can let you do in a cattle environment. So now, if you compare that with cattle, so of course pets are VMs, virtual machines in that example. But if you compare that now, with cattle, you're gonna see that effectively um, uh, containers are given numbers. They are mutable, automated. We shoot them behind the barn when they're sick, and we replace them by immutable replacements. So that gives you a sense of mitigation when it comes to malicious actors getting a foothold in the container. You can just kill it and go back to immutable state. So the bad actor ends up losing everything. They're done. And so that is obviously something that is of something you want to think about. When it comes to infrastructure, you often should use infrastructure as code and GitOps principle, meaning everything is code, it's automated, it's streamlined, and so really that gives you a lot of flexibility and ability to instantiate your entire stack with a push button deployment, giving you that automation and replicability, and not caring if this thing goes down, because you can effectively proactively have disaster recovery automation to keep your environment always up and running through effectively horizontal scale of these containers. And so that gives you more freedom to update your software, to update your stack, to not worry about downtime and migration planning as much, because you are now more comfortable with that self-healing, automated instantiation of the environment. So that's really a key to success when it comes to security, but also a big enabler when it comes to the velocity and the adoption of continuous delivery of capabilities in production through the DevSecOps principles. Of course, thanks to GitOps, everything is version controlled. You have no human in production with no elevated privileges. So everything is in the source of truth in your Git repo. Your declarative state is in Git. Everything is in Git. So that creates that source of truth for your backups. All you got to back up is effectively your data and your Git repo. So now you have an evolution of state of your desired state. You can go back in time. You can roll back. You have a great autonomy there. And effectively, if your entire stack is treated as cattle, including your Kubernetes cluster and so on, you end up effectively, seeing that you streamline the access to that cattle concept by enabling your development teams to not have to worry about all these things. So really, this is always something to think about, in my opinion, when you want to build highly available and resilient, capability. That's something you want to proactively push to everyone. So now when it comes to security as well, I think what's key is that you are able to inject sidecar containers and effectively decoupling your cyber capabilities from your workload and application layer. And so what's important there is that you can now effectively deploy your cyber stack in a decoupled fashion, and you can update it without impacting your workloads. You can inject a reverse proxy with Istio Envoy with your service mesh to create a zero trust layer on top of your existing stack. You can add observability and centralized logging and telemetry capabilities without having to update your mission software. And so that's essential to effectively be able to react to events, cyber events, and not have to coordinate with hundreds of teams when it comes to updating these containers, so you can become more efficient and really effectively deploy all this stuff in a streamlined fashion. So really, best practice is to really think everything as cattle and everything as Git, as code. So not just your infrastructure and configuration as code, but all your networking rules, all these policy as code, even your documentation as code in Git, in your source of truth of your source code repo. That's going to enable you to automatically scale and be more replicable, automated with no drifts. We see a lot of people struggle with day two updating of their stack, and by using effectively these principles, you are now capable of automating all these things. So if you have multiple locations to worry about, that push button deployment concept and cattle concept really enables you to move faster and accelerate your deployments with also the benefit of minimizing the risk to your production stack when it comes to disaster recovery and high availability and resiliency as well. So take a look at that concept if you have not heard of it. It is very critical, in my opinion, for anyone that is effectively trying to move to DevSecOps. So now, cattle, to be clear, doesn't just apply to the application layer. You want to also think about your entire stack. And so what I mean by that is, ideally, you don't get locked into a cloud provider and you are deploying your stack to be agnostic and abstracted using Kubernetes, so you're not locked into a single cloud provider. But you also want to make sure that your platform layer and your Kubernetes cluster and the nodes and your entire stack is treated as cattle. You don't want to have bottleneck when it comes to updating your stack and being able to effectively upgrade your clusters and have a zero downtime while doing so. The more you move to GitOps and DevSecOps, the more your cluster needs to be cattle. And so for that, you want to make sure you have blue-green deployments. You have an ability to effectively roll a new version of Kubernetes and load balance it in a way so that when you move versions, you have no downtime and you effectively streamline your capability. So, and when you think about why does this matter? Well, I can tell you that if you want to compete in 2021, you're going to want to really streamline that process, and the velocity and the compounded save time effectively makes you faster, leaner, and gives you the ability to compete in a world where no one is waiting for you to figure this out. So please, take it seriously. People kind of dismiss the benefit of all these concepts, but I can tell you there's going to be no organization in 2021 and 2022 that can effectively be successful without these principles. So really think about it and make that a priority. Some people will dismiss it as a nice to have thing. I would argue it's essential. It's the foundation of your house or your building. You want to make sure if you don't have it, that you invest in it. And if you keep building on top of a half-baked foundation, that's going to come at tremendous costs down the road, and effectively the costs are going to be increased, and you're going to face a tremendous pain to move to those principles. So you want to do that now, and you want to take care of it right away. All right, so now we talked a little bit about cattle and pets, and you've met my dogs and my cows, which is great. So now, I'm going to take some of your questions. Again, like I said, there's a little bit of a delay between when I talk and it shows up on beautiful LinkedIn. So thanks to the 209 people for joining us live. So there's a little bit of a delay. So please go on the comment section and type your question so I can really take those live and answer your questions. So I'm gonna go through the list now, and again, it's just me by myself doing this, so I have no one to do this. And just to be clear, I'm gonna bring up again, Jason. Thanks for being here. where should we submit your question? Right here. What you just used to type your comment, that's where you're going to type your question, so I can take it live and bring it up. So Philip mentioned the fact that the media has misrepresented some of my statements on U.S. versus China. Yes, I think obviously, as you know, always media is here to attract people to their websites, and so the titles are often clickbait, as we know. And they use the title that, saying that the U.S. has lost against China, and of course that's not what I said. I'm not going to dig too much into this because I'm going to be live on TV tonight on Tucker Carlson and tomorrow with Sean Hannity and many other TV shows during the week. So I'm going to be answering all this live on TV. It's going to be fun. And I'm going, this is apolitical. I'm going based on the order of who reached out to me. Okay. So yes, we're starting with Fox News, but we'll go everywhere. And unfortunately, I've heard that some of these stations are telling me that if I go to Fox News, they're not going to have me on, but I'm just going to go where people allow me to go and talk to whomever. This is not a political conversation, so I'm not going to make it political. But what I can tell you is, without a doubt, my whole point is to wake up America to this concern. And we have not lost the war yet, but I can tell you that as it stands, if we do not wake up and take action, or even if we implement the plan we have right now, it is not enough to be able to compete, and we have no chance to winning this unless we wake up right now. And it's not about 2 years, 5 years from now, and 7 years or 10 years from now, like we see on some of the useless 750 pages reports we see pushed out by the government. This is about doing it right now and not waiting and not using excuses to wait more. So that's all I'm gonna really talk about today about all this media frenzy. As I said, I'm gonna be live on TV, so hopefully you're gonna be able to join us and hear what all these great journalists are gonna be asking me live. All right. So Stephen has a great question. Do you have a preferred documentation process? I like the idea of documentation in Markdown, checked into GitLab. Then the next hop will be to publish to Confluence. This could allow for automated documentation jobs to check those Markdown file updates and run in real time with scripts to gather facts and publish real artifacts in Confluence. I like this idea, but could be technical debt we don't need. What have you seen that works well? Like I said, everything as code is essential, so you're spot on. In fact, I believe we were the first one at scale to implement this during the DSOG at Platform One and DoD with DoD CIO, and we used Markdown on Repo One to document all of these publications. So this is something we have actively put in place, and we even automated the generations of PDFs. And yes, sure, you could push it to Confluence and create artifacts that go to different places and have a bunch of different pipelines to do some version control. What's for sure is Markdown is a little bit painful. It's not always easy. So you want to be able to streamline that and keep it simple. So I think the key is to keep things simple, right? You don't want to create a massive, complex process. If artifacts are binaries, try to find a way to keep them as binaries, right? So don't overthink it. Use artifact repos, source code repos, right? But everything as code, everything as much that you can put into your Git repo is probably what you want to be. So you have that GitOps mindset and disaster recovery capability and so on. So spot on. Great question. All right, so a lot of people. Thanks, Travis, for joining us today. So Linder, I'm sorry if I butcher your name. Leander, I don't know. But you're asking a recommendation for students, how to join security companies if you are not American but German, for example. So at least in the government, this will matter, right? So in the government, people will want you to have a U.S. citizenship, but I don't believe that security companies care, at least if you are from some of the friendly nations like Germany. I don't believe any NATO country should be just fine. So I think you're gonna have no issue there. Now, in terms of joining security companies, I think you want to really show your value. You want to unfortunately, I think people still care about certifications like CSSP, CEH, right? I'm on the board of CEH. I got a CSSP as well. They're worthless. They're completely obsolete. They're a joke. They are compliance and not security. They're not hands-on, so you don't have to know how to do things to get a certification. You can get away with it just with a book. So that's something that is what it is. As someone that would hire people, I don't really care about them, but I know many people do. So you want to check that box and not have that bottleneck. And I would argue CSSP is probably the most prized certification right now that you could get. So do that. Get experience as much as you can. Don't go to the dark side, right? People say that could help. I don't agree with that. Be a white hat, maybe even propose to help companies close to you to look at their cyber posture and do some assessments. Be careful though. You have liabilities there if you don't have insurance. You probably want to be careful there that you make them sign some type of contract holding you homeless and doing it right. But then, I think LinkedIn is a great tool, right? You want to publish, you want to talk. I sold 2 companies on LinkedIn. I, found my DHS job by reaching out to Doug Mon at DHS at the time to get into DHS. So I wouldn't be in the U.S. government without LinkedIn, right? So use it as a tool, invest in it. You want to use your profile as your resume now, right? So you really want to pay attention to that. So that's kind of my recommendation to you when it comes to thinking about how to get into security companies. So Remy has a great question again. How would you abstract the management layer on multi-cloud Kubernetes clusters? And there are a lot of capabilities now coming out with management plane for multi-cluster management. In DoD, we felt that it was too early because first, this creates a tremendous cyber risk, right? That shared control plane, management plane, if that gets compromised, you're going to be in big trouble. So clearly, that's something to pay attention to. Okay, you wanna be careful there. There are a lot of options. The issue you're going to find that you probably, when you start investing into one of these options, they get you pretty much locked into their construct, and even the automation. And still, a lot of people make the mistake of having a lot of manual work in those tools with dashboards and a lot of manual stuff, which effectively pushes us away from GitOps, right? So you want to be careful there. You don't want to risk it to just start pushing manual behavior to your team. So you want to pay attention to that. You also want to pay attention to the vendor locking aspect. Most of these multi-cluster management stacks now support multiple Kubernetes distributions. And so you're not locked in terms of what Kubernetes distributions you can use, but often you want to pay attention to where that centralized cluster management stack is hosted. Can that be on premise inside of your environment? Using that as a PaaS or SaaS is a tremendous risk, in my opinion. That gives the keys to your kingdom, of your entire kingdom, to someone. And so that's worrisome, in my opinion. You've seen recently, Azure getting breached with their Kubernetes management stack. And so that's something to pay attention to. Multi-tenancy is very difficult. So all these companies have to bring these capabilities in a multi-tenant environment, and that is very difficult, right? So you want to be careful there and pay attention to vendor lock-in. There are multiple products, right, that do this. often closed source, most of them, because that's a paid feature on top of open source stacks. So you're not going to find most of these to be open source. And you're pretty much getting locked into that management layer. So that's something to pay attention. All right. So I'm going, by the way, in order to the questions. So I'm not picking, okay? So always happy to see people from all over the world. We've seen Florida and Texas and Buenos Aires and so on. That's exciting to see. All right. So Maya has a great question. In the business world, industry statistics are 70% of IT implementation projects fail. This is not due to tech, but to culture or inability to manage change effectively. What has your experience been, and what are your recommendations for how to best implement new solution successfully? That's very complex questions, right? The culture is essential. People will say that technology doesn't matter, and I don't agree with that. I think those people are not technical enough to understand why it matters. With the lack of talent and the shortage of talent, it is essential to really be all in when it comes to ruthless automation. And so ruthless automation is essential. If you don't automate, you're losing the battle. So building everything on the right foundation, building your platform as cattle, everything as cattle, having that DevSecOps pipeline, DevSecOps platform in runtime with zero trust, service mesh, baked in security, right? You want to have that continuous monitoring and so on. That's going to really set you up for success long term. And then use a strangler pattern when you are modernizing existing legacy capabilities, so you don't wait 3 years to start seeing results, right? You want to deliver fast. You want to be able to get in the hands of your end user rapidly, with small incremental delivery of value, so you can see what sticks, see what doesn't work. Don't spend too much time on features people don't need, right? It's all about the telemetry and the feedback loop and all the stuff you're getting from your customers that will tell you whether you're wasting your time or not. And so the more agile, the more you use DevSecOps, the more you use your DORA metrics to track your velocity, your delivery of capabilities in production, and use the principles of canary release, where you can release to a smaller footprint first of your users, get that feedback. If they like it, you go from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% all the way up. So yeah. So let's see, next question. Hopefully that helps. And again, Maya, if you want to dig into this, you feel free to ask a follow-up question here. So next question, Brian. DI2 is dead. Are we destined to be bound to serve a specific DevOps project collaboration environment? Yeah, so I was disappointed to hear that the leadership decided to kill DI2E. It's a big loss. It's short-sighted. It was never funded right. I was always telling those guys that centralized funding and making it free for everyone might be easy, but it's also not helpful to sustain the capability. And I think we have the proof in the pudding here. So that's sad to see. So now, of course, you have Platform One as an option, right? So Platform One has a full collaboration stack. It's a pay-per-play, but look, the Atlassian suite, I think on Platform One is like $40 per user per year. So look, it's not free, but it's not expensive. So people give me a break when they say it's too expensive. It's not, right? So you should use it. Try to run Atlassian yourself, and you see how much that costs, right? So my hope is that that's going to push people to fund and bring more services to Platform One, including potentially getting more enterprise funding. So then, we can offer for free for smaller groups of people and teams access to these tools at no cost, right? That will be great. And I guess I still say we because I still feel like I'm in the government, but I'm not in the government anymore. But I'm going to be an advisor to SecCaf, so that's going to be my recommendation to the secretary. Um, so hopefully we're not this, limited to service specific DevOps collaboration. Although keep in mind, right, whether it's run in the Air Force as an enterprise service or it's run in OSD, INE like DI2E was, that doesn't make a difference, right? Egos get in the way of that. The rest is a joke, right? Whether it's inside of a service team in Air Force, Army, Navy, or in OSD, what difference does that make, right? Why do we even care, right? We shouldn't, right? So, all right. So I guess Jason is really sharing a lot of thoughts with Maya before, I believe, very similar questions on the 70% of project fail. So I'm not going to dig into that again, but I'm going to get into the second piece of your question in terms of what's the worst disaster you've seen in a tech project and what stage of the project did it happen in problem identification, fact finding, research and development, solution architecture, programming, etc. So the worst I've seen is definitely in the government, no doubt, because I guess I've been in agile teams my whole life, so that kind of disaster would probably not happen on the commercial side at that level of waste, and both in terms of funding and scale. Waterfall is designed to make you fail in IT, right? You're just too slow. And you're talking about stages here too, again, right? And I think that's also part of the problem, right? When you're agile, yes, you're going through these loops, and yes, you do some fact finding and R&D and architecture and programming and stuff, but those loops are accelerated, right? They're not phases of project. That sounds very waterfall-like to me. So ideally, you don't go through that process, right? It's a continuous delivery, and your MVP is out within 2 months, right? If you're doing anything in life and you're not delivering software within 2 months, you're already doing it wrong. So don't do that. And usually the stuff I've seen was pretty late stage and to the point where sometimes the tech stack, and we can get into classified stuff, of course, but the tech stack will be so bad that it was never going to work, right? It was impossible for this to work or scale. And so it took a long time for people to realize it, again, because we failed to deliver in production. So let's make that the priority. And by the way, continuous delivery doesn't mean delivering into a lab. It means delivering in production with actual end user using the stuff. Okay. So, all right, next question. What is from Remy here? What is the adaptive security component of my preference on Kubernetes? Active mechanism to integrate with Falco. So there are a lot of key pieces of adaptive security that are critical in Kubernetes. There's the basic stuff, and you mentioned, stuff like, the Falco scanning and seamless integration between Falco and Kubernetes. That's definitely one piece, but that's, I guess, preference. I don't know what that means, but, I think all of it matters, right? So there's different impact, right? And different maturity levels. I think a service mesh with mutual TLS enabled and east-west traffic management, right, to limit what containers can talk to what containers, that's going to drastically reduce your attack surface. I believe runtime is even more important than the scanning, right? So any behavior detection in runtime is going to be essential. But then also using Gatekeeper with OPA to prevent, containers coming from untrusted registries or containers that are not signed and tracked, coming from a pipeline. That will be essential as well. So I guess there's a lot of pieces to security in Kubernetes, and that's a problem, right? Running a Kubernetes platform is a job. That's why we needed a CSO, because it has a lot of moving parts. When I started in DoD, people were calling things DevOps, and I brought DevSecOps, and people thought, well, Sec is just like static dynamic analysis, and maybe some people were talking about container security scanning, but barely. My real vision was, hey, you're missing the point. This is not about the development pipeline side of the house, the CI. It's about the runtime and having the Kubernetes platform and the DevSecOps platform stack in runtime to do the continuous monitoring, the aggregation of logs and telemetry, and the zero trust enforcement, right? That's the most important piece, the runtime. The scanning, you do it once. Even if you keep scanning, you're gonna find CVEs. Most people don't know the impact of those. They're gonna dismiss them too fast. And so, the lack of software bill of material and tracking of supply chain is very concerning to me. So all of that, you have to pay attention to it. That's why it's a job, right? That's why running a platform is a job. And that's why you don't want your development teams to have to worry about all this stuff. It has to be baked in. You have to streamline the process, the inheritance of all these controls to the application layer so they don't have to worry about this stuff. So think about this stuff. Hopefully I answer your questions. Like I said, if I don't answer your question, post a follow-up, in the comment section. Okay. Next question from Tim. I mentioned that excessive ethics were part of the reason AI had been slow to take off in DoD. Do you think we should make a trade-off between moving fast and carefully considering potential harms and risk? Look, I think ethics definitely has a place in DoD, right? But if you ask me, right, if you look at the 100% of the funding of DoD and AI, I would argue right now between the waste, so I would say 50% down the drain, right? And then on the other 50%, you're going to see, maybe another 30 to 40% of that spent in AI. So in ethics. So really you have less than 10% of the funding going to mission capability. And that's, I think, a real mistake. Okay. Whether people agree with me or not, that's okay. I'm not saying we don't need ethics, right? Don't get me wrong. I think we have people right now in the government that I know that are anti-military, and they don't want the military to have AI-enabled weapons, even if done right. Meanwhile, China is not waiting for us to figure it out, right? So I think it's very important that we don't just stop at ethics, and that we think about first use cases of actual value that AI can bring to the table, particularly in basic vision, right? Whether it's satellite imagery or other automation that we could leverage through AI to remove the human bottleneck. One could argue, right, that if we had capability like this, the bombing of the 7 kids, in Afghanistan in the car could potentially have been prevented by using AI to analyze imagery better, to say, hey, wait a minute, there's 7 kids in this car. Are you sure that's a target, right? So I think it's not about, telling people, hey, we don't want to think about ethics. It's also about, hey, we can't be left behind. And I would argue the government has maybe 2% of the US commercial AI capabilities. The commercial companies are doing way more risky things that you think they are. And if you talk to Elon Musk, he's going to tell you that, and you can watch some of the videos on YouTube of him talking about it. He's going to tell you that, this is very scary to him, and probably the biggest existential threat to human life. But it's happening on the commercial side, and it's still dangerous, right? So if we do ethics, when I see the EU talking about doing regulation or banning AI, right, in certain fields, that's foolish, because China, is not part of this, right? So unless China agrees to do the same, and Russia, right, then we should not be the one saying we're not going to do this, right? The deterrence aspect of this is very much like us saying, we're not going to do nuclear weapons anymore, right? That's not a good idea. AI, I would argue, in the next 200 years will be even more powerful than any nuclear bombs that you've seen ever, right? And it's a massive enabler of decision making, insights, automation, to the point where AI can effectively understand things that we don't even comprehend. it's already smarter than we are, right? So something to think about, right? So Tero had another great question here. A DIA analyst once told me that the government is always 20 years behind in its thinking when it comes to technology. So we are now in 2000 and getting tech startups. Is this accurate in your perspective? I don't know if it's always been like that, right? I think that's a little short-sighted. I think it's getting worse, mostly because the innovation pace is accelerating. So you used to be able to get away moving at the 5 to 10 year cycle and still be leading. And if you pour money, right, some stuff is going to stick. Now, in 2021, the velocity of tech is so that, in the year, 2 years, you're obsolete, irrelevant. And so, you don't have that luxury of time. And the whole acquisition process is broken. Even budget planning. I mean, we asked to plan 2-3 years ahead. TikTok is a weapon system from the Chinese Communist Party to collect intelligence all over the place. It's criminal to even let it run in the United States. It's mining data from everything you see, touch, having your background, your feelings, where you are, your location, what you talk about. It's mining data. It's a weapon system for China. TikTok didn't exist a few years back, right? But now it's game changing, right? So you don't have the luxury of time. So I will probably stuck around the 2000, maybe 2010 now. We pushed the needle a little bit with cloud and different things, right? So I think the IC is certainly doing much better than DoD, okay? But I would say probably 10 years behind, maybe 20 was a little hard, maybe 15. But what's for sure is that used to be good enough, and we became complacent. We were so far ahead that we had no sense of urgency. But slowly and surely, the near peer adversary, who, by the way, now is not near peer anymore, and we need to wake up. It's a peer adversary on many fields, particularly the field that matter in the next war. Those matter, and we don't have the luxury of time. So we need to wake up. So #Wake Up America. Okay. All right. So all right, Whitney. Will the US government turn to partnerships with technology organizations to help curb the time to market in achieving more competitive technology advances? So we've done massive progress with AF Ventures and AFWorks and different things in the government to already enable some of this. I think there are two issues, right? There are many companies that refuse to work with DoD, often because honestly we can talk about things because it's classified, so people don't know how bad things are. They don't see all these malicious actors. They don't see what's happening. They live in a bubble of Silicon Valley where everybody is happy and nice, or most of them, and they don't realize how bad things are, and they have no clue what's going on. So I wish we could find a way to declassify enough so we can share more with people, so they would probably, I would say, if they're normal human beings and care about America and their kids, proactively wake up and want to help. So we already have the problem of many companies don't want to do it. Some, because they don't want that technology to be used on weapons. Some because they feel like to do business with DoD is going to take too much time and they have other priorities, right? But it's essential we fix this. It's essential we convince people to be part of this. China is not asking people; they tell them to be part of it, and and they have no choice. We don't want to get there, but anyway, this is certainly something that is probably the only chance we have at winning against China. When you're fighting against 1.5 billion people, they're smart, they're hard worker. The fact is, communism, despite hating it, is helping them in war fighting situations to push agendas and get things done without people complaining or slowing things down, or egos or silos getting in the way. So they have a lot of advantages. So we have to outsmart and be faster and more agile and it's going to take a lot. It's going to take everybody to join and be part of this. So like I said, hashtag Wake Up America. Okay. All right. Roland is asking, can you remind us what issues I have with Safe? Because I still have them. They're not gone. Safe is a great tool before people moving to modular architecture and DevSecOps. It is just not designed for microservices. It's not designed for modular capabilities. It's too bloated. It's anything that's 500 page, 700 page, and certification heavy and bloated that pretends to be agile is already a joke, right? But then on top of it, particularly in DoD, because we don't know agile, because of the mapping with waterfall, people love it. They think they're doing agile, but they're not, right? So that's obviously a problem. And then safe, by the way, the goal is not to be safe, right? You want to be safe, but that's not your goal. You don't just wake up and like, today I want to be safe, right? No, today I want to innovate. I want to go to Mars. I want to do stuff, right? You don't just wake up and be safe. And safe, by the way, when you hear release freeze and release planning and all these events and all these freeze, that makes no sense, right? That's anti-safe. Anything that slows down your delivery or bloat your continuous delivery or coordinate work across teams when you should be decoupled is pushing really that monolithic approach of architecture and not microservice driven. And everything can be decoupled and cut into pieces. When people say that weapons cannot, they just don't know enough about agile. And we demonstrated that you can do that, including with flight control stuff and real-time OS work. So it is completely doable. All right. So Michael is saying thanks. Thanks for joining, Michael. Good to see you. So Leander is asking, did China really win over the US? No. So I didn't say that, right? So the article was a little wrong in quoting me, I guess. I said, as it stands, we have lost unless we wake up, right? So in 15 years from now, if we stay as is, even if we implement successfully the DoD AI strategy, which is a joke, it's not enough. Even if we successfully implement, which, by the way, I've failed us to successfully implement strategy in DoD for a long time. So even if we manage to pull it off and do it, it is not enough to win. So as it stands, we're losing and we've lost. But it now is time to wake up and fix it and partner with industry, partner with companies, and make this happen, right? And companies that do business with China, you need to wake up and stop your business with China and grow a backbone and come help the US government, right? Most certifications are mimicking without understanding 90% of the time. Yes. So effectively, you can definitely get a certification. First, the threshold is pretty low. There's no actual hands-on stuff. I'm impressed with the Kubernetes stuff. Many of these certifications require hands-on exercises. I think that's actually great. That should be mandated for any certifications. People that just answer, multi-choice questions, that's just too easy. Sometimes, my brain just works in a way that it's just common sense. I can find the answer even if I don't know really the answer. So that's already cheating the system, right? So, all right. The process for acquisition is slow and painful, and defense contractors know how it works while others struggle. So the government doesn't always get the newest and greatest, no doubt. That's another piece of the bubble issue, right? The DoD is designed to be a bubble between the clearance process, acquisition nightmare. Before joining the government, I've never done business with DoD. I would never do business with DoD if I didn't care about the nation. And so we need to break that vicious cycle. We need to be able to have people go into industry, come back, not lose their clearances, We need to be smarter there. It's just such a debacle in terms of the talent management and the ability to bring people into the government. The fact that I made it is a miracle. Literally, like the stars had to be aligned in 50 different ways for this to work out. I've seen people wait 10 months, 11 months to get a job offer. They had already started their other job after 2 weeks. It's just, this whole thing is really a disgrace. So, yeah. Rakesh is saying cattle makes sense if we have a Kubernetes cluster, but how about the Kubernetes cluster itself? It needs to run somewhere. Fargate is good for non-daemon workload to run cattle. How do you treat VM as cattle to run daemon workloads? Well, it's a couple of thoughts, right? First, anything can run as cattle. It's in your head, right? You care about uptime, right? If you depend on your clusters, you're already not building a strong enough, resilient Kubernetes stack. So what I mean by that is you want to be able to not only kill nodes, but upgrade clusters and have a blue-green deployment, right? So you load balance it. You can upgrade a cluster, swap the load balancer, kill the old cluster. That's cattle, right? So you can kill your nodes. You can kill, you can using GitOps and automation, you can spin up a new cluster, have your older version, and then flip the blue-green, go to the new cluster, right? You can do that, right? You don't need a fancy capability to do that, right? You can do it with basic load balancing. There's multiple ways to do it. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's overnight. It's a maturity level process, understanding. But the more you treat everything as cattle, the more maturity you get in automating your deployment of clusters and push the deployment of also your upgrading process. So including the process to swap your load balancing from blue to green at the cluster level, right? At the API level, at the ingress level, right? The more you can do that, the more successful you're going to be. I'm not saying it's easy, but that's a crown jewel, right? If you get there, that's why I said, cattle does not stop at the application layer. You still have, I see people running these old version of Kubernetes. That's a disgrace, right? Azure got hacked because they were running this like 3 years old version of RunC, which a bunch of CVEs. Like, that's disgraceful for a multi-tenancy cluster. Like, update your dependencies for God's sake, right? All right. Next question. Shane. So Shane asked, will zero trust strategies slow down agility in software development and DevSecOps implementation? It could if it's done wrong, right? If it's done right, it's baked in, right? So with us, Platform One was always using zero trust, and that automation of the east-west traffic and ingress whitelisting and egress whitelisting is not rocket science. If you have a proper ICAM stack, identity management, and you do things right, if you have the right foundation again, right, and the right processes, I don't see why. It should be the foundation of doing business anyways. Zero trust is not new, right? I pushed it 5 years ago at DHS, despite, Chris Krebs at the time saying they didn't believe in zero trust and moved on. Didn't stop him from getting fancy awards, but, the DoD only really started implementing zero trust when I deployed the first cloud native access point a year and a half ago in DoD, right? So that's something to think about. All right. So someone was asking why is DI2 not a service-specific collaboration? I think what he meant, LinkedIn user, I don't have your name, that he meant that by service he meant duty service, Air Force, Navy, Army, right? So Platform One is created by the Air Force, right? So it's a service-specific collaboration tool. I would argue OSD, INE, right, where DI2 was from, is also OSD specific stuff. So does that really matter? I don't think it does. So, but you're certainly right that it's still the same commercial tools and capabilities. So it doesn't really matter, right? So Tim is, and by the way, I have a fancy shirt saying thank you for all the people joining and being nice to me, despite the death threats I'm getting that I'm apparently bought by China to say all the stuff I'm saying, which is complete insanity. People lost their puppy minds. Um, so Tim, you mentioned zero trust. Everyone is talking about zero trust. Yes, right? When I said 5 years ago, I can tell you no one was talking about it though. Can you share your perspective on where the U.S. government is on zero trust and the reality of implementing zero trust government-wide or even DoD-wide? Well, I can tell you I'm biased, but the most advanced deployment of zero trust was the stack we built with Steve Hazelhost and Matt Houston at Platform One for the Air Force and Space Force with the Cloud Native Access Point and the CNAP in a box. It is real. It's at scale. We have a very significant zero trust capability. Zero trust is never done. It's a maturity, so it's going to always improve. We had a great opportunity to deploy DoD-wide, DoD CIO at the time, back in May 2020. Decided not to do it and just did the basic flow 3 with Office 365, which is not zero trust, and it's certainly not doing enough. And it's only around Office 365, which is really not moving the needle at all, and a big waste of taxpayer money, in my opinion. And so they refused to listen to me to deploy CNAP as the ingress to Office 365 and all the NIPA and CIPRA environments and so on. So we're doing it, in the Air Force and Space Force, but it's not DoD wide. And I'm hopeful with General Skinner, who is a great leader, that he's going to really push this with their project Thunderdome to partner with the Air Force to really do a joint team, right? That's people ask, what's the difference, right? Well, a joint team is probably the best way to be successful because of egos. You want to bring people from every service and probably bring it into DevSecDef and create a zero trust office. It shouldn't be in DoDCA or this, I think, um, because of egos. So you want to bring it up for a period of time, at least during the creation of it, and staff it with joint teams, right, to run things and value streams with the government being the integration, not a prime, not a single company. So the government has integration, but multiple companies as awardees to do the work, right? So. All right. So, goodness, I scroll to see the questions. That's a lot of questions. So, goodness, I lost the list. Here we go. Okay. How important is 5G security for the DoD? It's essential. 5G is probably the future of communication, at least for now, until they 6G or something. I don't know, 7G, 8G. But it's essential, and security should be baked in and not an afterthought. Unfortunately, we still see too many innovations coming out with very little baked in security. So that should be a given now. I don't know why we have to talk about security. That should be just, an expectation, right? So, right, Steve has another great question. For management plane, I'd like to hear your thoughts about Rancher. I don't see a reason for Rancher in high security production, but for development, it seems reasonable. Furthermore, running Arcade 2 and the Rancher works great. I mean, that's my personal preference, but I can tell you both Arcade 2 and K3S are probably the most flexible, advanced, and capable capabilities of Kubernetes right now that I'm tracking. Others will get you more locked in, have opinionated CRDs, be less open source. DI2E is not DI2E, Day2IQ is also a great option. OpenShift is a valid option, expensive, but does the job, gets you more locked in. TKG, same concept. So if you want to be more open, I think clearly Arcade 2 is a great option. I actually do think it should be also in high security production. I don't see why not. Honestly, I have no concern about their security. We've done enough work to validate that. So yeah, it's definitely a great option. All right. Sam, is the U.S. government acquisition system the root of the DoD and IC technology adoption lag? You mentioned a continuous lack of funding in your previous role as well. Curious to hear your thoughts on that now. Um, it's not just lack of funding; it's a wait. We don't have a lack of funding, right? We have a problem of waste of taxpayer money, right? There's plenty of money just spent on the wrong places and in vacuum silos, reinventing wheels, letting people in the army recreate capabilities that the Air Force has built 2 years earlier, all to do it worse and with more vendor locked in because of personal bias, right? It's despicable. It's disgraceful. I don't think the acquisition system is a root cause. It's not helping. I think it's training in people, lack of training in agile. None of our acquisition guys have any agile training mandated. They have to go through the waterfall nonsense, but zero agile training. So that's despicable too. We have to mandate that. I proposed it to SECAF. They agree. Hopefully that's going to happen. IC is not lagging as much, so clearly that can be the cause. And we've seen in Platform 1 when we have the right acquisition teams that we can actually do worlds under 30 days. So it is doable, right? It's possible. So I don't think that's the root cause. I think it's lack of training, lack of investment in our people, lack of empowerment, lack of urgency, allowing silos and waste of taxpayer money and reinventing wheels because of egos and wrong reasons with no tangible justifications as to why they cannot reuse something that already exists that was paid by the taxpayer, and getting away with it, not holding people accountable but classifying failures and not being able to talk about it. So you are in that bubble, right? Being in that bubble where you don't see what's going on the commercial side, so you don't feel the pain and you don't even realize you're so far behind and moving too slow. And having the inability to bring people in and out of the government, all this is the problem, right? More so than the acquisition nightmare, right? So anyway, so Tim has another great question. Compute is an important input into AI development. If the price of compute were to stop falling and instead level off, AI progress will slow. This might give the US time to get its act together. Would you agree with this take? I don't think so, right? Because China has a lot of money and we have a lot of money, right? We would buy it, right? We wouldn't. This is not a money problem, right? I mean, it might be for companies, but it's not going to slow China. It's not going to slow the U.S. This is not what's slowing the U.S. government. It's not the price. It's incompetence. It's different things, right? It's lack of urgency, lack of understanding, lack of expertise, lack of training, right? All these lacks, but it's not lack of funding. I can tell you that. The question is, where do we spend it? And I would argue when we spend $1, we get 10 cents of value. I would argue other companies, organizations, when they spend $1, they get probably 80 cents of value, right? So anyway. Evan is saying we are a small business developing zero trust software for DoD. What advice do you have for companies like us looking to establish buy-in from leadership? You want to show how you're different, right? You want to pay attention and look at what we've done with the Cloud Native Access Point on the software.dev.mil website under the SOP documents, software.dev.mil, software.dev.mil. I think I have also that document on this curated link here. So click on that link and look at the videos about zero trust and stuff. Go on the software.dev.mil website, look at the video on Cloud Native Access Point. The reason why I'm saying that is that by doing that, you can see what we have. If you show up to sell me the same stuff, you're wasting my time. We already have it. We're too deep in. We're moving forward. We're pressing. What are the gaps? What are you solving? What is different, right? If it's just anecdotal, if it's a tiny incremental value, go to someone that's not less advanced, right? You're wasting my time and your time. Talk to Steve Hisselholst. He's an awesome guy. He's going to really care about zero trust. He's a zero trust of the Air Force and Space Force. but show up with value, right? Show up understanding what we have. Do your homework, right? We're not going to be the one telling you what we have. We recorded videos, we put it online. We did the work, right? You know what we got. Now tell us what we're missing, right? So LinkedIn user is saying, thank you for my service. Thank you. How can we improve federal procurement of technology products and services, and also federal management of federal IT personnel to maintain our competitive edge? Whew, that's an endless list of things we have to do. But first, we need enterprise services and contracts to buy at the pace of relevance and get discounts based in volumes and bulk discounts. We need to be able to bring people in an easier fashion with an easier access to the to clearances. But we also need to have better pay. We need to have better title. We have to have a path to progression of title and pay over time. We need pretty special pay for not just cyber but also data science and software and architects and AIML engineers and data scientists. If you look at the gap today of architects, everybody talks about airman coders. I don't think that's what we really needed. We need it, right? But it's not the gap. The real gap, I can tell you right now, is essentially the lack of architects, of cloud native architects that can make sure that we're not getting locked in, that we're abstracting, that we're cutting the system into from a monolithic standpoint into microservices and modular Lego blocks that can be swapped and be agile, right? All this stuff is the answer, right? So it's a drastic overhaul of everything we know, right? Honestly, when I think back of the issues of DoD, there's not a lot of things that are going well. Acquisition contracting is a total disaster. We don't know agile. We buy stale requirements. We don't buy agile capabilities. We don't buy capacity of work and staff teams with skills and definition of done of delivery and quality and passing the DevSecOps pipelines and the user stories, grooming the backlog, not done by the government leaders. We complete delegate down to a prime that's supposed to bring a shiny answer to the table, which never happens. We need to be the integration. We need to be in a situation where we don't have a single bidder for a program as big as GBSD by cutting the work and making it easier for people to be part of it. We are not able to bring the right talent. We see massive loss of talent right now, people leaving frustrated, and not just me. So there's not a lot going well, so it's time to wake up. So hashtag wake up America. All right. In fact, I'm gonna do that. Let's see. Wake up America. How does that sound? Here we go. Tack. All right. All right. Where to start to add security steps to existing pipelines, and what steps need to be taken care of to migrate from DevOps culture to DevSecOps? Unfortunately, the real difference between DevOps and DevSecOps is not inside of the pipeline. The real difference is you're going to take what is a DevOps pipeline, which is effectively a development tool, a CI tool, to become a runtime platform that runs in production and staging to orchestrate your stack, do GitOps, use Flux and Algo and all these things, implement GitOps, continuous scanning and monitoring, service mesh implementation. So your real step is to say, this is not about development only. This is a platform that's going to run in production, that's going to orchestrate my stack, bring that baked-in security, bring that monitoring, bring that zero trust. You start with, tools like the Twistlock of the world, the Aqua, the, New Vector, StackRock, pick your poison to monitor the stack. And then you add, of course, you sprinkle a little bit of zero trust on it with the service mesh and centralized logging and telemetry to capture all the telemetry and alerting, right? And you start to get something pretty cool, okay? Yes, Platform One has a Jira and Confluence instance. Use it. It's cheap, $40. Jim, ABMS seems so vital. Why is there a perception that so far it is not money well spent? Thank you. So I can tell you, during the time where Preston Dunlap was running ABMS, all these exercises ended up becoming enterprise services and enterprise capabilities. So the money was very, very well spent. Okay. In fact, probably the biggest value that anyone has delivered came from Preston Dunlap in the DoD by bringing all these enterprise services, all these layers, right? Because we think of the fancy ABMS capabilities of connecting weapons, but if you don't have a zero trust stack, you don't have a cloud, you don't have edge, you don't have transport, you don't have connectivity. If you don't have that and crypto options and endpoints, right, you don't have the foundation for IBMS or JetC2. He built it, right? And that's what we use for the JetC2 MVP. That's what we use today for the foundation of ABMS. So that wasn't waste of taxpayer money. Since RCO took over ABMS, there was not a lot of money spent yet, so it's a little bit too early to tell. But a lot of the velocity was lost, and a lot of the partnerships, and I think it's very important we think about having more than one PEO to be managing and running ABMS, particularly a PEO that is not used to doing SAP work, because that's just, we need a collaborative approach here. So, all right, next question. Yeah, Joseph. So I'm sorry that you was late, but we did talk about infra and applications and how to deal with that. So hopefully this should be recorded. I assume. I don't know. I've never done it before. So hopefully you can watch back the first 30 minutes. We covered that, and then I had a question also about multi-cluster and infrastructure. So please check that out if you don't mind. Does the risk management framework RMF provide value to the government? If so, is there anything you would change? And if not, how will you address the governance need? Look, RMF, the real issue is how the government decided to implement it. RMF is not the problem. The DoD implemented RMF wrong, often with manual things and manual checks and still manual processes instead of live dashboards. And so it's not the RMF that is a problem. It's the training of our people. We're dealing with compliance teams that are not security savvy. So we need to educate people in actual security. We need to educate them on dashboards and live feeds and see what's actually going on. We have tools now with Chaillan and different tools to look at east-west traffic, north-south traffic, put in protocol live in real time. Every time I've seen an ATO, it was wrong, right? Even basic data as put in protocol, egress, and all that was wrong because the ATO was so stale compared to what was running in actual production, right? So something to think about. How does a component developer fit in rather than a solution supplier? It depends on the component, but without knowing more context, Tom, I think you become a Lego block in Iron Bank. You become a piece of the pie, and you want to provide that container so it can be used anywhere at the edge, on clouds, on weapon systems. It has to be agnostic. And by building your components and building your software of your components in the Lego block fashion as containers, you enable that. So that's how you fit in, right? By containerizing your capability and delivering it as a container that's agnostic to the Kubernetes distribution and to the cloud environment. Have there been any plans for DevSecOps platform like Platform One to integrate with a more modernized IRM mechanism? Obviously, EMAS is still very monolithic and does not integrate with a more modern technology. SD Elements was a mechanism being utilized. However, seems they are teams unhappy with it. Well, yeah, EMAS is just a design for a monolithic system, so it doesn't work. You have to completely rewrite EMAS to fix that, right? When you move to layers and containers and you want to swap containers to run on different platforms, you shouldn't have to do the whole system again. So none of that is designed to succeed. As the element we use, because honestly, we're not aware of anything else that can do that and do the layering approach and cut and streamline the process of validation of these controls. Is everyone happy with anything in life? Probably not. But it works, and there's not anything else that we know. If you know something else, put it in the comment below. Love to know more. So Jeff is talking about Ryan at Nest. Oh no, so I guess you're answering to Ryan. It doesn't show on my screen the right way, and you're talking about OSCAL. And so for people that have not checked Open Security Control Assessment Language, OSCAL, that's a format that will help effectively represent controls in code and baselines and SSPs and assessments. And that's the future. I just don't see enough companies using it, right? So wake up and bring it into your products. Use the format, right? Automate everything based on OSCAL. I love it. We just don't see products, bringing it to life. So that's disappointing. So, all right. Essentially, Hamed says, whoever gets there first is who determines the ethics. But without development of winning technology, any talks of ethics is purely speculation and opinion rather than principle and policy. Yeah, I mean, look, we all agree that weapons shouldn't be controlling that AI shouldn't be controlling weapons and decide who to kill and when, right? So there are a few lines that we could agree pretty quick, but the rest is pretty blurry. And until we try things out, and proactive regulation has never really been successful, right? It's a massive disabler of innovation, and particularly when it's not applied across the industry, when you have China still being able to get away with stuff, just like the Paris Accord, right? I'm all about climate change, but if China can get away with stuff, but we have to do climate change control now, and China has another 10 years, that's unfair, right? That's ridiculous, right? We need to wake up. China is not a third world country like they pretend in the Paris Climate Change Accord, right? TikTok is a weapon platform. And I think that's, if there's one thing you want to remember from this first AMA, and again, thanks everybody for joining. We have 30 more minutes of questions. But if one thing you want to remember is TikTok is a weapon platform. And if you don't understand why, you need to understand what can China do with this data by augmenting it with AI ML capabilities to know what you're thinking about, what you're talking about, what you see, what you have in your background, what you're wearing on your shirt, what you're thinking about, who you're sharing with, who is watching what, who is resonating more with things. It's a weapon of misinformation. It's a weapon of information control. It's it's a weapon, right? And unlike Facebook, which I don't think was designed for malicious behavior, despite creating issues with kids, TikTok was designed to be a weapon, right? What's the main reason for the waste in the current AI program? There's a mix, right? There's anti-military people that just want to focus on ethics, so we never get to spend money on weapons, right? So those people should be removed from the government and go work for another agency, not DoD, right? We're a weapon organization, that's in the name. And incompetence, right? Lack of and by incompetence, it's not about degree or about anything else than experience, right? It's like when we build a cloud office and we have someone running the cloud that has never built a cloud before, and then we tell them, hey, you know what, you're going to build a cloud for 4 million people. I don't think they would even get an interview at the job for Google, right? So yeah, so Oscar is aware of Oscar, and he's talking about a mechanism to ingest container scans, runtime scans, source code scanning into a more modernized version. So there's thread fix is an option, but Platform One built something called the VAT, which does that. And I will reach out to Philip Record at Platform One. Philip Record, Record. He's on LinkedIn. He's a nice guy. Reach out to him. And try to see if you can collaborate on the VAT. I mean, I was always about open sourcing it anyways. And so what the VAT does is injecting the scans we use into a central place to then, look at the findings and decouple the findings and provide justifications on the findings and so on. It doesn't do the source code scanning because it's a whole different set of problems, but ThreadFix can do that, right? So you can look at products like ThreadFix. I'm sure there are others, but I think ThreadFix is kind of leading. The reason why we didn't use ThreadFix at the time when we built the VAT is because it did not do a good job with containers and layers of containers. And so I wanted to make sure that the layers of containers were well separated, so we don't have to reapprove the CVEs of a base image and stuff. So we had to build the VAT, right? So. All right. That's a great idea to put your question as a question tag, so I can see it, because there's a lot of discussions in the chat, so I have to read what's the question and what's not a question. So thanks, Hamid, for doing that. If the U.S. government internal technology, infrastructure, culture, and behavior needs to be transformed to maintain the current world order to compete with the CCP, wouldn't you say getting people like you back into the government is one of the way to go about getting refocused and moving forward? Yeah, I agree. I'm disappointed I had to leave, but I there was too many things that went wrong. When I started the JetC2 MVP and I managed to convince all these companies and NATO and 5i and all these people, Amazon Azure, to partner and create a joint mesh and bring Equinox, all these great things for half or tenth of the money that we usually spent. And then they tell me they couldn't get the funding. That was the straw that brought the camel's back. And then, Platform One wasn't getting funded, but now we got the funding for 23 after I resigned. So, that was positive, right? I wanted to wake up people, and I couldn't say what I wanted to say. So being able to leave was great. Also, I was getting complacent and getting used to the pace of the government. So that's when I knew I had to leave and come back, maybe, right? Remember what the normal pace is about, because you get sucked in, right? You become part of the problem. So I think it's important we have people that come and go, right? I lasted 3 years. That's way more than I was supposed to do. So, yeah. But I would go back, with the right people and the right push and the right eagerness to compete with China, and not just hearing the right things, but walking the walk. Of course, the government might not want me anymore, but I'm always here. So. So someone is saying, I can recall the DoD's problem with Chinese hacking being a problem back in 2001. While working at the RNOSC at DISA, it was daily occurrence with the morning briefings to the commander. I always felt that DoD needed to take a more proactive approach on this, but it never happened. Yeah. I don't know what it takes for people to wake up. People always talk about a Pearl Harbor. We had water supply hacked. We had all oil facilities. We had power plants. We had pretty much everything hacked. OPM, right? And yet nothing happens. I don't know what the threshold is for people to wake up, but we should already have done that. So let's see. So Christopher is asking, what do you see DoD doing to attract and cultivate a new generation? Not enough, and I think what happened in Afghanistan, honestly, is going to really make it very difficult for people to want to go and serve. That's disappointing because we need it, and we should walk past some of the mistakes that some leaders made without any accountability. But it doesn't send a great message for a new generation to want to put their lives on the line and come do this. So it's going to be tough. I think the real message that I hope to send is that if you guys don't come and help us, we have no chance. And you better start learning Chinese right now, if that's the case, right? So Steve has another great question. Is continuous pen testing a requirement on the radar for the DoD? In my experience in the air gap sector, there are, of course, scans that generate security artifacts that must be mitigated or create a plan of action against them. We assume this process catches most of the known configuration patching issues. However, there are many workarounds to satisfy a scanner. I feel our sector is overwhelmed with security engineers that run scanners, create a BOE, and submit with a poem. And of course, your question was cut there, but I get it. Continuous pen testing is already a requirement for the continuous ATO. And so we are doing that at Platform One. Kessler and all these teams have to do continuous pen testing, and it's a requirement there. Not a requirement for everything else, but we agree that if you want to move fast and you want to implement DevSecOps, you must have a component of continuous pen testing. And so we've done that. The question is, who is doing the pen testing? What's the quality? Are we swapping teams? Are you getting complacent? How proactive are you? Are you doing, purple assessment where you give insights to the team to try to get in, which we do at Platform One, which enabled us to find a lot of great things when it comes to multi-tenancy security. Running multi-tenancy stacks is very difficult. So it is a requirement for continuous ATOs, but it's not, mandated for everything. But yeah. All right. Of course. This app keeps struggling when I scroll too much, and then it takes a little minute to load. Here we go. Thank you for your service. You're welcome. At the end of the day, why didn't the vital mission purpose of DoD prevail over the multiple funding point? Ego, trust, effective communication resources. Which tech program needs to be stopped today for X, Y, and Z reason? Alice, I guess is your name. Why didn't it prevail? I think because there's no reward for taking risks, right? So, let's face it. I sold 12 companies before the government. I don't need to work anymore. I can take risks. Most people don't have that luxury. I get it. You want a job after you leave the government. You don't want to take the hit for making a mistake. There's no reward for success. And in fact, you're less likely to get into trouble, if you take a risk, if you do nothing and fail, than if you take a risk and fail. So that's scary, right? And then what tech program needs to be stopped today? All the Army Cloud and DevSecOps work should be merged into Platform One, and all the Kessa Run platform work, not the mission work, but the platform work, should be merged into Platform One as well. And we need to stop some of the Army leadership from saying that it's healthy to compete between the Army and the Air Force, but instead we need to join team, have joint staffing, and merge manning, and tackle these problems with the limited set of talent we have, as a joint team with one team, one fight, and stop people's ego getting in the way, or worse, stop people with tremendous conflict of interest with their former employers making these kind of decisions. So Ryan is asking, how does Tesla AI development compare to other global AI initiatives? China has a lot of investment in autonomous driving, but China is a great Tesla is a great company. They are leading in that field as well. The fleet is awesome. That gives them a ton of data. The self-driving capability on my Tesla I used to have was really awesome for my 2-hour commute to the Pentagon. I think they're doing very well. If DoD was more like Tesla, I wouldn't be too worried. Okay. How do Russian hacks compare to China? They're pretty much the same. The difference though, you have 1.5 billion Chinese, right? So, yeah. Michael says, what suggestions do you have for modern application cloud enablement for a legacy organization that is very stuck in their way and major barrier for change exists? Tenants in app development and cloud exists, but how do you go about getting the tests of the organization to buy in? Part of the issue is the organization risk posture. They want to continue to do what they have always done, including dollar invested. Yeah, so shifting testing and cyber guys to the left. And by the way, it's a massive lift, more so for cyber guys, because they have to move from runtime, patching, scanning stuff, and all these production drift manual stuff to code back in Git. And so you become a developer or a lightweight developer. So it's harder for cyber. Test is much easier. I think doing pilots and shifting some people left and putting them into the team and having one team, one fight, and not having a barrier between dev and tests is essential. And just by starting slowly and showing the light, I think people will realize it's just a better way of doing business. That's my take. So Harmon, I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not so sure. Sorry. Just wanted to say thank you. This conversation is much needed. Thank you for having the courage to speak openly and honestly about this. DoD culture does not always allow us to admit our shortcomings, so this is encouraging. The DoD culture is designed not to talk about things. Allegedly for operational security OPSEC, bogus claims that's vastly underestimating what China and Russia knows about us, which is a massive joke. But really, it's just here to hide and prevent people from being held accountable when they fail. If you keep it in the family and you don't talk about it and you get your cushy job in the defense industrial base when you leave, you're going to be okay. And that's just a disgrace. We need to hold people accountable. People cannot keep making billion-dollar mistakes with our taxpayer money, and we need to step up our game. And so you don't have to thank me, because honestly, I'm doing this for my kids. If we don't do it and if we don't act now, there's no hope for a future for our kids. And honestly, I'm going to do whatever it takes for my kids. So, people that's going to slow me down are going to have to get out of the way, so. So Tom, talking about appreciating my candor. Is the USA too internally conflicted to repel aggression by the Chinese Communist Party? And is it possible to truly ally with others in AI to repel CCP? Or finally, is it reasonable to expect more mature politicians and the detente with the CCP to avoid conflict altogether? So I don't believe for 1 second we can avoid conflict. At some point, it's going to be China is so big and have so many people, they're going to need more. They're going to want more, right? So I don't see you can avoid conflict for a period of time, but it's never going to be enough. And by the way, if you want to do that, the better way is to make sure that China is fearing the United States and that we have the deterrence in place to do that. So you have to be strong. If you're weak, you're not going to scare anybody, right? So you're very much right that we're way too conflicted, and we need to wake up, and we need to have one team, one fight, one set of Americans. There's no Democrats, Republicans. Maybe that's going to be the fight that's going to unify us again. And if we stop listening to media and to politicians, maybe we have a chance at doing this, right? Yes, it's completely possible to ally with others. I think Five Eye is a great option, of course. NATO. The issue is what kind of needle do they even move, right? That's my fear. I'm not too convinced that other nations really will make a big difference in this fight. So we have to step up the game, and we can't wait for somebody else. CM, what is saying? I'm sorry, I don't know what CM stands for. But what other industries share similar issues of integration and can benefit from the CNAP? CNAP could be used by any organization. It is not designed for DoD. It is something I would use on the commercial side anytime. It's a zero trust implementation. Anyone can benefit from CNAP. It's designed to be cloud agnostic and enable on-premise deployments as well. Use it. Yeah. Why isn't there a security wrapper that can be wrapped around anything? The sidecar container is kind of that concept. It's just widely misunderstood and underutilized. But if you move to Kubernetes and you use sidecar containers, you can wrap that around any container and act as reverse proxy, as behavioral detection, as centralized logging and telemetry. You can do a lot of things. So I think it exists. Just need to use it, right? Do you think AI/ML would affect cybersecurity? Without a doubt. In fact, most of the most advanced cyber capabilities are based on AI/ML. Behavior detection and prevention is 100% ML driven learning, right? So, and of course, there's going to be a whole set of security issues of your AI pipelines. How do you train it? Where the data is coming from? What happens if you train a model with compromised data? What's the impact on the model? There's a lot of issues there, right? So without a doubt, AI and ML already affect cybersecurity as we speak. I'm trying to understand the question, but is the U.S. government as multiple companies a drawback or hindering efficiency? I guess if you can just clarify what you mean. I don't know what you mean. I'm sorry. How can efforts not be embraced in DoD to inform other ecosystems with multi-cloud and multiplayer? Oh no, sorry. How can effort not embraced in DoD inform other ecosystems with multi-cloud and multiplayer edge or branch office scenarios? I think we want to bring the right talent to run our clouds, and those talents should inform us on what is missing in terms of multi-cloud and edge and disconnected edge and so on, and while not getting locked into a cloud provider and stuff, right? So there's a lot there. I mean, of course, it's education, it's training. The more you look like you're trying to sell something, the more you're going to turn off people. So I don't know how you end up, maybe building training content, or maybe, doing this kind of events to educate people on this so they can wake up and understand the problem. Most of these teams are not mature enough to understand the problem, so then they can't fix it, right? They don't even know they have a problem. So, all right. So Conrad is saying, first, thank you. Do you have a deception built into your designs? Example: if a user or endpoint use hit open the decoy, that endpoint user lose access to all data and apps except the decoy network continue for threat data. It's not as advanced as that. The way it works today is if there's any malicious behavior, we kill the container and go back to immutable state. We don't keep the decoy and continue to collect the threat data right now. That's not a thing we have. That's pretty cool. I love to see that. But right now we kill the container, alert the teams, and go back to immutable state. That's the current model. But that's pretty interesting to see how we could continue to collect that data, right? Is FedGovT a good place to train a workforce that can apply the skills in enterprise or SMEs on Main Street? I don't know FedGovT honestly, so I can tell you. I can tell you that when we built the Learning Hub for Platform One, we used the Linux Foundation content, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation content, the O'Reilly books, content, which is also on the cloud and online, because it's unbiased. It's not pushing one product over another. I don't know about the other things going on, but that's really what we ended up using. So. So Kevin is asking, do you think that DoD is going to start focusing on industrial control systems to not only mature them but secure them? And do you think there is a way to help secure such legacy system with zero trust? There's definitely a way to help them secure them, no doubt. We've done it before. And the CNAP in a box can do that. You can put it in front of the legacy system and effectively enable zero trust in front of the legacy, right? Not within the legacy, not the east-west traffic inside of the legacy, but in front of it, ingress egress, right? Which drastically reduces the attack surface already. But in terms of focusing on ICS, there's a massive team at DHS that's also supposed to do that. DoD has a team to do some of it. It's widely underfunded, in my opinion. So I think there's a pretty big gap. So I don't know if we're going to wake up on that one. We should. Particularly, I would argue at DHS, right? DHS should really solve this for everybody because of ICS, of critical infrastructure. It's even bigger in DHS. So yeah. Is Fed IT organizing similar to healthcare or the AEC industry? I have no clue. I don't know. I don't know anything about it. Sorry. I'm gonna put the hashtag Wake Up America. So there's Tracy, good friend Tracy is here. Hello Tracy. Thoughts on thought the central part of the issue is having architects, folks who understand the hands-on engineering and the architectural trade-offs. Yes, architects. That's what we need. We need cloud-native architects that understand how to decouple systems. That should be the most important technical government job, and not contractor-driven job. No doubt. So hi Mimi, saying thank you. You're welcome. Can we get your thoughts on DoD data strategy? Where do you see gaps and shortcomings with respects to emerging data technologies? What is your opinion of the data fabric technology? So full disclosure, I help write it with David Spurk, who is a great patriot. And doing a lot of amazing things for our nation. We have a CDO that is really eager to move weapon systems to the 21st century when it comes to data. It's obviously a good start. It's still a little vague, and it's baby steps. It's great. It needs more meat. It needs more teeth. We have a great data fabric capability we're building with that Preston Dunlap is building in the Air Force with Eileen Vidrine, our Air Force and Space Force Chief Data Officer. So we have great capabilities in the Air Force. So yeah. All right. Trying to find questions versus comments. If you don't mind putting a little Q in front of your question. So yeah. Nick, I have worked at the Fed and state government for 18 years. I focus on turnaround and restructuring large failed programs. So you need to make sure you always use a strangler pattern. And if you want to watch videos, there's one on the software.dev.mil website. But Google strangler pattern and learn the strangler pattern. That's the foundation of everything for restructuring these programs. Do you think the government is going to re-implement or do greenfield, start fresh for large failed SAP programs? Ideally, they would do the strangle pattern, right? So greenfield, while refactoring and taking a bite at a time, so it doesn't take 3 years, and then you end up losing your funding because Congress is tired of waiting and seeing no results. So strangle pattern with greenfield, that's the answer. So strangler pattern. I might just put it. I'm going to put a banner, right? Because this is important. Strangler pattern. All right. Cool. So yeah, that's another product that can actually help as well when it comes to looking at other options around SD elements. The Ignite assurance platform is also an option as well. So what are your thoughts about monitoring systems in the DoD, like monitoring performance, conducting root cause analysis? It seems monitoring will go together with security and DevSecOps. Thank you. Wake up, America. Yes. No space though. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Yeah, I mean, continuous monitoring, both in terms of performance, telemetry, and security is the foundation of DevSecOps. And so being able to capture all that data and using capability to gather the telemetry, the service mesh does that, gets you all the telemetry of the health of your application, the performance of it, tracking, issues, and of course, with continuous monitoring on cyber, looking at drift of behavior, that is all essential, right? So you're spot on. This is exactly what we were pushing in DoD as well. So no doubt. And Rich is saying if TikTok is a weapon, it's a baby gun compared to 5G. I don't know if I agree. I think you vastly underestimate how much they can gather and what kind of AI/ML capability they can do on top of this. I completely agree. 5G is a massive risk, right? But I don't think it's a BB gun. I think it's massive, way more than we think, and it's long term impact on kids, and it's huge. So Michael talking about TikTok again. No one knows how to spell TikTok, huh? That's TIK. How is the nature just opposed to our understanding of AI in DoD? DoD is in kindergarten level compared to TikTok. There's no comparison. It's not even playing on the same field. You don't see it on the front end of the application of TikTok, right? It's a back end piece, right? It's what they do with the data that you don't see. That's the real control, right? That's the weapon, right? The front end is just a way to capture the data and the intelligence so the weapon can do its job on the back end of it, right? And we have our friends at the MOD here, so I wanted to say hi to Jim. Thanks for being here. All right, Tim has a question. Achieving the vision laid out by Dr. Roper for digital acquisition demands the ability to make dozens of modeling, analysis, system engineering, configuration management, and software tools, COTS, and homegrown work together in an integrated manner and be changed frequently as new capabilities are introduced and new configurations of the constituent pieces are needed. And this super app needs to handle data exchanges with other platforms and networks. There seem no way this can happen, exist. It is a big lift. I think when you move to DevSecOps, you get a big chunk of that. There's a lot of legacy modeling and simulation tools that are way too old school, and they need to be drastically modernized. Right, that's a big problem. So you're right there. The more you move to GitOps, the less tools you have for configuration management and all that. A lot of the cost tools and custom tools start to have some type of API and cohesive way to do some type of business. So it's not impossible, but it's a lift. It's difficult, right? So all right, let's see. Can you discuss the current state of the movement to a data fabric? So in the Air Force and Space Force, we had 26 systems. We're merging that into 6 and making sure they can, integrate and federate. And so the answer is kind of a aggregation stack, which also enables federation, and edge component, which has connectors to ingest data from legacy systems. It's just the beginning. They did the award maybe a few weeks ago, so it's very fresh. I helped kind of design the architecture of that. Hopefully, it's gonna be done right, and we're gonna make this happen, right? So, Sean says DevSecOps and Platform One are great for building applications. What's the equivalent for modern data warehousing? Lake, accessible tools, data science, VM on demand. We ran a lot of the data lake stuff on Kubernetes as containers. So ideally, we want to move all these stuff to containers. And most of the data science stuff we do is containerized as well. So Kubeflow and all that stuff. So yeah. So Johnny is asking for low swap edge devices running airborne platforms. What bare metal OS would you recommend for running a case Kubernetes or K3s stack? It really depends if you really have drastic needs of support. But you look at SpaceX is just running Linux with a real-time patch, right? So it's open source. I think there's a few companies coming out with an open source or continuing the work with CentOS, right? It's a great option if you apply the real-time patches. If you need tremendous support and help, Wind River, of course, has been a significant partner in this universe. But you want to make sure you don't get locked in, and so the more you can use x86 or ARM64 and limit what really needs to be real time, hard real time, soft real time, not real time, the better chances you have to stick to an open source stack so you can move fast. Look at SpaceX, right? That's a great example right there. So Tim is asking, Dr. Roper's vision for digital acquisition calls for near continuous integration of dozens of. Oh, you asked that. Okay, so you shorten it so I can. And by the way, yes. So Cloud One has a digital engineering as a service capability that is integrating with Platform One and has a lot of these answers. So, yeah. Alan says, is there any sector in the government that you believe is doing Agile well, and how do they compare with their experience in the Air Force? I mean, 18F has been obviously great. Agile, DDS, right? Yeah, there are pockets, right? The issue is they don't know how to scale, and it's usually smaller programs. I've yet to see it in a very large program. So Joseph says, where is the disconnect between open source community and the U.S. government security requirements? Things like implementing FIPS 140 is a continuous challenge. Other requirements missing something, or open source communities don't care. I mean, look, FIPS compliance matters, right? Because if you use a wrong crypto bits to encrypt your data, you're in trouble. And so it matters. Open source team seems not to care about security much. You look at Kubeflow, they use end of life product that were already end of life before the freaking project started. Right, talk about caring about security, right? The findings of Kubeflow, they are drastic, they're massive findings. So overall, the entire open source community mostly doesn't care about security. There's very few projects caring about security. Even in CNCF, it's not enough. It's anecdotal. SIG security, there's great project like SIG store and all these projects, but it's too small, right? And so we need to step up the game, and they shouldn't wait on the U.S. government to do this, and we should just make that the way to do business, right? All right, so we have 3 minutes left, so I'll take 2 more questions. So baked-in security is a desired state of the deployed code or app to the warfighter. In Nick's world, how do you achieve this permanent state? You never let tech debt grow so much that you don't have that baked in. So if you build a foundation, if you abide by this principle, and it's baked in, and you don't let the technology debt creep up, and slowly deprioritizing user stories around security, you keep that security baked in. That's the answer, right? To do it permanently, it's a continuous thing, right? It's a balancing between new features, securities. What should we pay attention to now in terms of risk? I've been pushing platform one to look at multi-party signing, at really make sure that we have a great use of gatekeeper with open policy agent to be able to enforce where the containers are coming from. All these things, it's been tough to make that a priority over other features, right? So, but you should. All right, next question, and it's going to be, I guess, Michael. Given the government environment of PowerPoint deep wins with tons of messaging and marketing hype, how do you suggest that we cut through the BS as developers to highlight tangible value of our messaging? Well, I don't know if it's up to the developers to do it, but I think everybody should care about tangible outcomes, right? And be able to measure it, feel it, touch it, see it. And vaporware, is good for a period of time to get people excited and started at something. I had to do that for platform one when I started because I had no funding, and I had to get people on board and excited. But at some point, you have to build, tangible outcomes and capabilities that people can feel and touch. And so I think continuous delivery of value is the answer. So by delivering value and tangible outcomes, you can demonstrate that this is more important than PowerPoint slides. So anyway, that was the last question. I wanted to, again, thank all of you for taking the time and joining me. I'm sorry I couldn't take all your questions. There's a few more, but we're going to do this every 2 weeks. So the next event is not next Tuesday, but the 26th at 1 p.m. same time Eastern. So we'll catch up, get more questions. You're gonna see me on TV this week, so be nice to me. I'm not used to going on TV, so I'm freaking out a little bit. So it's going to be fun. And we'll catch up in 2 weeks, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. And please stay safe and healthy. And please wake up, America, and help me spread the message. We have not lost the war. It is time to wake up before we do. And the current plan is not going to make us win. So we have to do this now. And we have to do this for our kids and grandkids. Time to do this, guys. Thanks so much for joining me.